Welcome to the Fantasy Football Hub YouTube channel. Today I'm joined by the big man Bakar to preview Game Week 12. Bakar, how are you doing? It's been a while since we've talked about football, but we're back. The international break is finally over. And first of all, what I want to do is, because if you're like me and you don't really care that much about international football, especially when it's sort of like friendlies or the Nation League, let's be honest, irrelevant competitions, you kind of zone out a little bit. And I'm going to ask Bakar, and hopefully this will be beneficial to everyone, what's going on with key players, injuries, availability, etc. We're going to go through a list, and Bakar's going to tell us sort of what's going on with each individual player. But Bakar, how are you doing? How's your international break been?
Yeah, hi Jack. Hello, welcome to all the listeners and viewers. I hope you've been fine. Yeah, I mean, it was a relatively chill kind of break. We actually haven't had plenty of information since the last time there was Premier League football. So the likes of, let's say, Trent, there's no update as such.
Okay.
I doubt that he will be risked personally because of the games that Liverpool have coming up against Madrid and City in the coming days. But if he's fine for Southampton, he's obviously a keeper. Currently, with the current information available, I'm not sure. Mbomo, we haven't had a concrete update yet. I guess we'll probably hear from Thomas Frank in the press conference, and he'll let us know. Same with Semenyo. Um, Palmer, there was this a report from a journalist apparently suggesting that he might not be risked of the weekend, but Enzo Maresca was asked today in the press conference. He said the Palmer is doing better. So with the current information available, I think Palmer will be fine. He'll probably just play. Even though I think he'll probably get taken off around the 65, 70-minute mark if Chelsea
Okay.
are doing well, which I probably expect them to. Apart from that, Saka, I mean, 5 minutes ago, you said there's been this update that
Yeah.
he's in a race against time to be fit against Forest. I personally haven't read the report, but apparently there are rumors that he's a bit of a doubt this week. So there's that. Apart from that, are there any other flag players? Not that I can think
They're
of. I'm
not
not
massively sort of popular players. Maybe the likes of
exactly.
Foden. Foden is one. He's got a little flag, a knock. There are a lot of international break injuries. Is the main thing.
Colwell is
Yeah, Colwell,
expected to be
exactly.
fine. Dunk has returned to training and he's close. So I would expect that this week sounds 50-50, but he's going to be fine for Brighton's fixtures coming forward, which is great news for owners. And yeah, that Colwell is back in training. Colwell is another one.
Yeah.
He's another one who's kind of sought after this week. So yeah, these are the main ones who are popular in the community.
I guess ultimately we don't really have that much information at the time of recording. And we're recording
Yeah.
this on Wednesday or Thursday lunchtime now. So I mean, it's gonna be one of those we're gonna have to wait for news, I think, and press conferences
Yeah.
are gonna be massive. Let's have a look at your team, how you're looking for the upcoming game week, and you have four of those players that we just talked about. Just generally, what are you thinking with your team this week?
I mean, I've been doing relatively all right in the past couple of weeks.
Yes, worth saying that Bakar had a big green arrow last week, so it's a good week before the international break. Unlike myself, but yeah, the flags are a concern. I would say here, maybe I don't know.
I mean, things have been going well. So my point is, I don't drastically want to change too much in my team.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sort of hamstrung with just one free transfer anyway. I have one free transfer and point 0.8 million in the bank. But you know, the likes of Salah doing really well. That move from Haaland to Salah's sort of really paid off. Then Bruno finally doing well. Solanke doing well in that fixture against Villa. So you know, a lot of issues in the attack have kind of been sorted. I'm very happy with the attack going forward. Calvert-Lewin is the only one who sort of is. I mean, let's face it, he's been an absolute disaster to own. In fact, I tweeted in the previous game week that I sold Calvert-Lewin in Game Week 5. Um, Sorry, I sold João Pedro in Game Week 5 once he got injured. I bought Calvert-Lewin, and in that spell, Calvert-Lewin has played 6 times. He started 6 games. He has 11 points. João Pedro came off the bench with the substitute appearance against Man City, and he's gotten 11 points. That just goes to show how big of a disaster Calvert-Lewin has been. Uh, there is no there is no sensible justification of keeping him, and if you can sort of afford to move him on, by all means do it. But I have sort of earmarked João Pedro as the main replacement, and I have done so since the past
yes,
3 or 4 streams since we've been talking. So I have been saying that Calvert-Lewin to João Pedro is always the plan. I am not entirely sure about João Pedro's minutes this week, whether he starts, and even if he starts, whether it's like an early sub or so. So I'm going to give Calvert-Lewin another go in my team. I know it's probably not the sensible thing to do, but I'm just going to do that. And
I mean, I'm not sure what else you would do this week, to be fair. You can't sell when you have other issues in your team. You can't sell Calvert-Lewin before Brentford at home. I know he's not been a good pick, but it's one of those where you can't force that transfer this week. I don't think.
I mean, I mean, Jack. I mean, he's had Ipswich, he's had Fulham, he's had Southampton, he's blanked in all those fixtures. So there is a case of moving him on, but it's just that I'm not sure whether João Pedro's. Let's say if João Pedro had Southampton at home this week, I think I would have sold him. But because I'm not entirely sure about
Yeah.
João Pedro's minutes, and the fixture isn't like that amazing, Bournemouth have an all right defense.
Yeah, it's a hard fixture.
So it's an all right fixture. So I would rather make that transfer next week, basically. And that's not the only point, actually, in my team. I think it's also worth mentioning that as of now, I'm actually planning on benching Solanke in my team. And I need that eighth attacker because I'm not exactly confident about Solanke against City. I mean, he may nick something, but it's not a fixture with a high ceiling. So I'm going to play Calvert-Lewin actually in my team. I'm going to start him. And I'm sort of going to hedge him against Flecken because hopefully if Everton score, then Calvert-Lewin is involved, or vice versa. If they don't, then Flecken hauls, right? So that's the approach I'm going to take this week. And I'm probably going to bench Solanke.
Yeah, that just screams Beto 1-0 to me, what you just said there. Flecken and Calvert-Lewin are allergic to points. I think we've seen that this season. It's just impossible. And I'm a fan of hedging. I really am. But yeah, okay. Let's talk about your defense. We mentioned the two flag players there in Dunk and Trent. With Porro having a very tough fixture as well. Well, you said that Dunk. You think Dunk will be fine. So what are you thinking? Are you thinking to bench Trent, or is he a sell?
I said I expect him to be fine for 13, which is next week, not this week.
Right. Okay.
I bought Dunk a few weeks ago with the view of using him from Gameweek 13 onwards, which is when Brighton have a really good run of fixtures, which is exactly the time where I want João Pedro as well for similar reasons. But I'm not exactly looking at Dunk as a player I want to play this week because I'm not even sure he starts. And even if he does, I'm expecting a 1 or 2 pointer anyway, right? Yeah, Dunk is an issue. Porro is an issue because I think Porro's sort of sell-by rate has gone in terms of his utility in our teams, and the fixtures from now on in aren't great, and Spurs keep on conceding. I mean, I'm all right keeping him, but I mean, in an ideal world, if I had like 3 or 4 transfers, he's someone I would probably look to move on. Then Trent is the big sort of elephant in the room to address. I got him in last week, and this is where it's sort of gone wrong because I used my free transfer last week to buy Trent for Lewis. And now I will probably have to use a transfer to sell Trent or sell Porro and buy another defender, which doesn't feel ideal because I've already used a transfer to sort of address my defense. And this is the week where I really need a defender because from next week on, like Porro has a decent fixture, Dunk has a decent fixture, Gabriel has a decent fixture. So I don't necessarily have to make too many transfers from next week onwards. But this is a week where either I play Porro against City or, play Dunk, which doesn't exactly feel optimal. This is the kind of week where I really, really want to save a transfer, but I just think that my hand will be forced because I might be down to, 10 men or having a very suboptimal defender as my 11th.
I mean, it's actually ridiculous because your team is so strong. If you look player for player in your team, it's so strong. Like you have... I'll include Valdemarson in this because if Flecken got injured, then Valdemarson would play. You have pretty much 15 solid playing players, and you're still sort of blighted by injury this week. It is unlucky, but I mean there are a lot of flags for very popular players.
Just another point I'd like to mention is that I am actually I want to double up on the Arsenal defense, but I would rather be on a structure with Raya and Gabriel as opposed to a structure with Gabriel and Saliba. But if I'm forced into a transfer this week, I might end up on Gabriel and Saliba or Gabriel and Timber, whatever, right? Flecken's fixtures after 14 are a bit of an issue. So I would rather have Raya in goal and address that. But I mean, I might not exactly have that luxury unless I'm willing to triple up on the Arsenal defense, which could happen just by the way, if Saka is not an option, which could be the case with injury. If he's sort of out with injury, then he might not be a transfer that I might be willing to make in the weeks to come.
It's so annoying that I had Saka. Saka was my plan for game week 12, and I made sure all my transfers were sort of weighted towards that move in terms of making sure I had money in the bank. So like going with Jimenez instead of Cunha, for example, or saving money elsewhere was to get Saka back in. But if he's injured now, or if he's not 100% confirmed, it's going to be, you can't like force that move a week early just because the Arsenal fixture run is very good.
this week I might be forced into a defensive move. Next week I'm definitely doing Calvert-Lewin to João Pedro.
Yeah.
I mean, that's two transfers booked in already, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I might want to get Saka in 14 or Ryan 14, but I'm not exactly sure whether I'll have the luxury to do that with just one free transfer and already having a couple of moves booked in. So, that's Game Week 14 is actually a point where United's fixtures turn. They have, three poor fixtures back to back. Same with Mpomo, who goes on a rough round of fixtures. So that's one of those weeks where I might have sort of earmarked or penciled in a move for Saka, but I'm not exactly sure I will have the luxury to do that. But
Yeah.
I mean, it might be a blessing in disguise because Mbomers or Bruno, they're the kind of guys you might want to keep over Christmas anyway, right? So
Exactly.
just because they're nailed and won't be rotated. So yeah, it feels like a sort of critical point of the season because we're going to have so many game weeks back to back. That I think
Mm.
it's going to be a very defining point of the season, especially with the festive congestion kicking in.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, let's talk about potential defender replacements then. You've mentioned the Arsenal defense. Just if you were to make a defensive move this week, can you rank sort of the top 3 to 4 defenders that you would be going for?
I think Gabriel is clear. I think Gabriel is clear. The rest simply because of his goal threat. I would put Raya as the second
Okay, yeah.
because of the structure and because of what he allows.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, and I think Saliba versus Timber is close because while Timber allows the 0.5 million saving, he is slightly more prone to getting rotated than Saliba, and he will eventually be a transfer out when White is back.
Yeah.
And bear in mind that Arsenal have, not they don't only have a good run of fixtures till January. That sort of extends all the way till the end of February, start of March. So I would probably want my second Arsenal defender, to be there till uh, practically the second time I wildcard. So do I
Yeah.
want to be getting Timber in when he's at the risk of getting rotated and if he's a transfer out later? It's a tricky choice. In an ideal world, I would rather pick Timber. Let's say if I was wildcarding in let's say in game week 18 or 19, I think Timber is the better pick. But if I am to use a transfer later, then it makes it tricky. And then I guess Saliba is the sort of more sensible pick. But it is a very tricky one. I think it's team dependent on depending on what Timber allows to the rest of the team.
I think this is a really tough spot if you are sort of forced into making a defensive transfer this week, and I completely agree with you. You don't want to be doing it, especially given that next week it looks fine for your team in particular. But yeah, it's one of those where, as you say, with Saliba, if you get him in, you're just going to have him there, and you're going to be sort of happy with that for a very long time, and then you can focus transfers elsewhere. Going a little bit further down the price list, just looking at the predicted points here, and Saliba and Timber are actually a good few points behind a couple of cheaper options. Well, Dean in particular is one that just stands out to me as one that is predicted to do very well over the next few game weeks. Obviously, we know how much of a troll he's been in fantasy football in previous seasons. But yeah, what about Dean, Ait Nouri, players like that you'd make a significant saving on?
I think we've sort of forgotten how good the Arsenal defense was just because of recency bias and because they haven't really kept too many clean sheets in recent times. But when you actually go through their underlying data in the games where they haven't had a sending off, they've actually had 3 games where they've had a player sent off. So the Bournemouth game was one. Where they lost 2-0. The Brighton game was another one, where it finished 1 on the City game was another one. So their defensive data is sort of skewed because of games where they've played with a man less. But when you look at the other games, apart from these games, they're still doing all right for defensive data. And because the fixtures to come are so good, uh, I think doubling up on the Arsenal defense is actually a really, really viable strategy. I don't
Yeah.
think having just one defender will cut it because almost everyone will own at least one anyway. And that's why I think doubling up is actually a really good strategy. And I would much rather be in a position where if I can, let's say, afford the second defender or Raya, I would rather go there as opposed to a cheaper, let's say, keeper or cheaper defender. Having said that, I think there are a few cheap defenders that you can get. I think if you need one this week, let's say if you have to play one this week, I think Hall is probably the best one because he's been playing really well in recent times. I think he sort of played Kelly out of the team. I don't think he'll be rotated. He's actually fifth for chances created this season, and he tends to do really well for bonus because of that those reasons. And I think he'll do really well against West Ham because West Ham, when you look at their flank weaknesses, they tend to concede a lot of chances down his flank. So I think Hall is a really good player to buy, not only for this week but for the game weeks going forward. But if you're buying one defender, if you don't have to use one this week and for the weeks to come, then I think the Brighton defenders are the ones to get. And if Dunk is fine or when Heke, I think these are the two picks that you should go for from a long term point of view if you don't need a defender to play this week.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Let's talk about forwards now a little bit. We've talked about Calvert-Lewin obviously, but just want to get your sort of general thoughts on forwards. I don't want to go I'm not going to ask you specifically about a certain player in general. Maybe a question could be, if you're on Wildcard this week, which quite a few managers are on a Game Week 12 Wildcard, what would the general structure of your forward line be? So that includes, talking about Haaland. Is he in? Is there space for him? But then, importantly, a lot of us now are on this same sort of shape that you've got here, which is a mid-priced forward and then two cheapies, or actually just three cheap forwards in general, and then putting the money into midfield. So if you're on Wildcard, what would you be doing? And can you sort of rank the general forwards for us?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. I think if I was on Wildcard this week, João Pedro would be the first forward I'd pick. I just think he's an easy selection. I think the second one would probably be Isak. I think I'd go Isak over Solanke because Newcastle have a better run of fixtures, and I just think Isak with no midweek fixtures should be really good for points. He actually has a 60% goal involvement for Newcastle this season. And when you look at the big chances for all players in the league in the previous 4 weeks, he comes across right at the top of the charts. So I would have Isak, I think. Isak, João Pedro, and the third is a bit tricky to pick, but I think I would probably go with the I think this actually depends on Saka, actually. If Saka is fit, then I would pick him in the wild card and I'd probably go with a cheaper forward.
Yeah.
But if Saka isn't fit, then you can maybe go a bit expensive in this position. But ideally, I think I would probably go with Raul Jimenez with the assumption that, Saka is fine.
If Saka wasn't fine, I'm going on a tangent here just because it's interesting for me. Who would you then go instead of Saka in that sort? Because you still sort of need. Would you go for Bruno? Is what I'm pretty much asking.
If Saka isn't fine, I would go with Bruno. Okay. But if Saka is fine, I don't think I'd pick Bruno.
Yeah, that seems very sensible.
Because in the wildcard team that I sort of drafted roughly, I had Salah, Palmer, because they rotate really well for captaincy. There's no sort of room for Haaland. I had Salah, Palmer. I had Saka. I had Mbeumo because the next two fixtures. And Mbeumo is actually a captaincy shout in Game Week 13 as well, because next week is a bit tricky for captaincy because City and Liverpool are playing each other while Mbeumo has Leicester at home. So he could be a legit captaincy option. And the fifth one was, one of Semenyo or Rogers. It could be anyone. Right, so there was no Bruno, being my point. But if Saka is not there, then you can probably just go Bruno in that position.
Just looking at your team, and we're going to come on to your recommended transfers and what you're thinking for your transfers in a sort of more locked-in way in a second. You have the money to do Solanke to Isak. Have you considered that? West Ham at home screams Hull to me, is all I'll say.
Yeah, I can see him doing really well. You're right. I would be very surprised if he didn't score. Because Haaland, Salah, and Palmer, they all have really good fixtures this week. We haven't discussed this, but assuming they didn't, I think Isak would be in the captaincy conversation because his fixture is actually really, really good. West Ham have been really poor of late. Newcastle at home tend to do well. But yeah, it is something I could have considered, but I just think there are too many issues in my defense to address. I would have ideally made an attacking transfer, but yeah, with just one free transfer, I think my defense is the area of concern.
Okay, so what are you thinking then? If I had to ask you right now,
if Trent is fine,
Trent's not going to be fine. Trent's out this week. We know Trent is very likely not to play this week. I think we can probably guess that. Do you think?
I agree, but I guess there's a 1% chance.
But Bradley, the thing is that he has a good understudy in Bradley. That's the thing. He doesn't need to be risked for this game. They're obviously expected to win this game anyway, and Bradley is very good. You know, if there wasn't another right back, say it was Joe Gomez, perhaps, I think there's the chance they might try and force him. But I just see Bradley playing.
The only thing which gives me a bit of hope is the fact that I think the difference between Trent and Bradley is actually bigger than the difference between Robertson and Tsimikas. So
I agree.
there is a bigger drop off. So I mean, but overall, I agree with your point that he's very unlikely to be risked. If we take the assumption that he's fine, then I don't think I will make a transfer this week, because then I think my team is set. I would probably save in that position, because I can then just field Trent, Gabriel, and Mykolenko as my defense, right? Then I don't.
But what if he wasn't fine? What if he was definitely out Southampton game, but would be back for the City game?
If he's out, then there are 2 or 3 routes that I can take. The first route is that I can just wing it and save and just play Porro.
I quite like that.
Yeah, I can wing it, and I could just be like, okay, it's a 1-pointer, so what? Yeah. I'll have Trent for later. What makes it difficult to answer this question is that I am still in my head. I'm trying to figure out whether I would want Trent later, and I think I will.
Really?
Around game week 16, 17.
Okay.
That is a spell where I think I will want Trent, and by game week 19, I would also want Haaland. So do I? Because I'm already sort of planning for Haaland in game week 19. I want to be in a position where, let's say, when I get to game week 19, I have a few transfers in hand so that I can make that surgery to get Haaland in with multiple transfers. Do I really want to be in a position where if I sell Trent this week, I might not have enough transfers to get Trent in or Haaland in, by that time. So these are the kind of things which are making it tricky. But currently, I'm sort of going with the assumption that I would want Trent back around 17, 18, which is making it difficult. And then again, I also have a Porro-sized hole to address that. I mean, I could easily sell Porro for Saliba. That is affordable for me. Do I sell Trent? Do I sell Porro? Right. So that's another question
that's tough if you think you're going
be answering.
Keep Trent, or you would like to keep Trent and not waste and not use another transfer there. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, Porro isn't exactly a player I want to hold either, right? So I could easily do Porro to Saliba. So it is tricky. So there are 3 options. I either wing it and play Porro or Dunk. Second is I sell one of Trent or Porro to Timber or Saliba. I think these are the only options that I'm sort of looking at right now. I don't think I'll buy Lewis Hall or Culver or anyone of that sort. I think if I can get to double Arsenal defense, I'll just go there this week. What would you do in my position, actually? I would like to hear your thoughts, and I would like to hear the thoughts of our listeners as well. If you could sort of leave any feedback in the comments on what you would do with my team, because I'm actually really struggling this week. Because there's no clarity on Trent, it's sort of really tough. Even if we get clarity, and even if he's out this weekend, it's tricky. I really don't want to sell him, but my hand may be forced. It's that kind of a situation.
It's tough for me. I think I have slight bias because I have Trent as well, and I'm looking to bench him and then get him back in the team. And I don't really have an extra I don't really want to use a transfer on him, so I'm similar to you if I don't have to. And I have the cover as well, so I'm not.
You have Ignuri. Right?
No, I've actually forgotten who I've got. It's been so long. I have Gabriel. I have Mykolenko who would come in. I have Dallo actually. I brought in Dallo last week. That was fun.
Damn, yeah, that was unlucky actually.
Yeah, so I've got Dallo, Gabriel, and then Mykolenko would come in for Trent, which is it's relatively similar to having Porro there. I mean, Ipswich away I think is quite a tough fixture defensively. I think Ipswich score quite a lot at home, so I'm not expecting anything massive from Dallo. But yeah, I mean Mykolenko coming in is completely fine. I don't know. I think I would, based on everything you said, I think I would try and roll as much as possible. Or you just, you sort of, you set your stall out now and you just say, no, I'm going to double up with Saliba and then just keep it for forever. Because you are right. Like this is the start of a massive, massive turn of fixtures. And when you were saying earlier about how Arsenal have been unlucky not to keep more cleans, I'm thinking about like the Leicester game, the Southampton game, after they kept that block of cleans at the start and everyone got them in, doubled up to profit off the easier fixtures. And then people were very annoyed because they didn't get the cleans, obviously, but the data was there. And I do expect the data to return.
You know what I would do in an ideal world? In an ideal world, I would roll a transfer this week. I would get João Pedro for Calvert-Lewin next week,
Yeah.
and then I would get then I would get Raya for Flecken. That is affordable.
I think long term that is better. I think that is long. I think if you can sacrifice a couple of points of EV this week, then I think that is the best thing to do. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, Trent's out. Here you go. I'm telling you right now, Trent's out. What are you doing? Putting you on the spot.
I wish I had the answer. But realistically, I've given you the answer, the options, right?
Yeah.
It is tricky. It is very, very tricky. But I think even if there's a slight chance that Trent is fine this week, I think I'll probably risk keeping him. I think so.
Would you play him then? I mean, he's not going to play, is he? Really, he's not going to. As in, if he's not going to come on for 10 minutes.
He's not going to come on for 10 minutes. Yeah, that's so I might as well play him if there's a chance that he plays. But yeah, I mean, I actually like this sort of line and this route a lot of having João Pedro um uh, and Raya later, but I don't want to be sacrificing points this week. That's the way I'm leaning towards. I think if Trent is out this week, I would probably sell one of Trent or Porro. I think reluctantly I'll concede. I don't think I'll play Dunk or uh, Porro. I just
Well,
don't think I can myself to do that.
guess what the AI is suggesting for you, Bakar? The recommendations. They recommend
Roll,
making no
roll.
transfer this game week. Why should I save my transfer? Well, no transfers. Great news. And then this is important. It will allow you to make bigger moves with more impact over the next game weeks.
Yeah, but again, is it taking into account that the Trent is out? You know, his minutes.
Yes, it is.
Might.
It's got Trent at 1.7 predicted points, so it's starting Porro for you right now at like 2.8, 2.9 points.
Yeah, I think long term that's probably the best thing to do. I sort of agree. I think long term that's
I
the
also
best
think
thing to
Forest
do.
is a tough. Like if you're making the transfer this week for the Arsenal defender, it doesn't really matter because you bring them in. You're bringing them in for. I don't know. I would expect Forest to score in that game. I think they're great. Not that it really matters because it's only 1 week. If you look at what are the clean sheet odds? What are the clean sheet odds saying for that game? They're not saying like
Okay,
50,
so
60%.
so I was actually looking at some of their attacking numbers this season, and against the better defenses. For example, they've played Liverpool at Anfield, they've played Chelsea away at the Bridge, and they've played Newcastle as well. Their attacking numbers in those fixtures weren't great.
Okay,
So I'm
fair enough.
expecting a very sort of negative approach from Nuno, where I don't think they'll attack much. Obviously, they can nick a goal here or there, but it's a fixture where it's going to be a
That's fair.
defense first game. And I actually don't think it's an amazing fixture for the Arsenal attack either. I don't think there'll be too many goals in this fixture. Maybe a 2-0 Arsenal win, something of that sort.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Okay, I think that's going to do it for this one. I think we've covered most things. Just a quick word on captaincy to end this off. If you had both Haaland,
Yeah, I think.
Salah, and you mentioned Isak, how would you rank all those guys? Or if anyone else? I mean, Palmer's there. The question with Palmer is the flag, and you thought there, you said earlier that he might just play 60, 65 minutes. So I don't think he's really a captaincy option this week unless we get some concrete news.
I agree. I agree. I think Salah's probably the best sensible one given the form, given the fixture. He's just coming on the back of a 2-week break, and Southampton have a big flank weakness on his side, so I would
Okay.
expect him to do really well. Haaland is also another one. I mean, hypothetically, there still plenty of people who I know personally who own Haaland and who didn't make the swap for Salah and who have just one free transfer. So can't exactly get to Salah in one move. I think if you still own Haaland is a really good captaincy choice this week. And I think he is actually sort of worth risking in terms of captaincy this week, which sounds funny because, 3 weeks ago, if anyone had said, he's worth risking, would have been crazy.
Yeah.
But given how recent things have gone, he does seem like a bit of a risk. But I think you just take on the effective ownership. His effective ownership won't be as big because obviously a lot of people have moved him on to Salah. And I think this could be the week where you can make a lot of gains because a lot of your rivals won't probably have Haaland. And if he does well as your captain, then you can make big gains.
Yeah, I love the fixture for him. I really think this could be the week where.
Plenty of injuries for Spurs as well, right?
Yeah, Van der Ven is, he's not going to play. It's Romero's a big doubt. It's one of those where it might make us. It's people are sort of a very short term thinking a lot of the time or very reactive a lot of the time in FPL. I am as well, where Haaland will blank a couple of times, say, oh, why do we need 15 point whatever million on any player? Then he'll get a brace or a hat trick in a game like this, and you'd be like, okay, that's why. But there we go. That's going to do it for this one, guys. 30 minutes or so of expert advice from Bakar. A bumper episode because it's a big week and we've had a couple of weeks off, or at least a week off there. So I hope you guys enjoyed it and got some value from it. As Bakar said, let us know in the comments. We're both in the comments section, reading your guys' thoughts on the video and your team. What transfers you're doing this week? If you have Trent, what are you doing? If you have Haaland, are you captaining him? Are you looking to sell him? You know, it's one of those. People have different thoughts about Haaland in their team, especially owners. But yeah, that's going to do it for this one. Bakar, thank you very much as always. Good luck this week, and good luck to all of you guys as well.
Thank you, Jack.